everybody. Good evening and welcome live in studio. It is the Richard Listen Show. Thank you for tuning in each and every week and for following us on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe and share with your friends. Tonight, we have many of your favorite interested topics. We have high performance in the area of dentistry, but specifically sports dentistry. What's it like to be inside the locker room and the minds of NBA athletes, as well as interesting lead-ins to the whole field of mixed martial arts. And we can hear some secrets about our guest, and he's not going to tell you exactly who he's worked on, but some of his favorite stories, how he wound up here, and what's that like to be both a professional and be involved on a sports team. My little lead in here this last week has been an exciting one for me. I just came from 3 days in beautiful Camarillo, California. Proud to announce 8 months of hard work paid off. The first time our little junior soccer team took home first prize. Yes. And so it was exciting. It was exhausting. Takes a lot out of you being out there. So kudos to all you sports parents who drive, pack snacks, and do everything you can to make that opportunity available to your young ones. Today is a special day for me because how often it is that you get to see the fruits of your labor later in life. And today's guest is someone that, without dating myself, that I knew when I was a younger lad, when I was a camp counselor. So it is amazing the power of social media and this show. I'm always encouraged by the people that are reaching out and connecting. And, you know, we're often harping on the dangers of social media, but there's also a real beauty of being able to connect and find out where are the people that you connected to, influenced early in life, and to find out about their accomplishments and get a chance to share them. So I am so excited, and it gives me great pleasure to add that value back to our guest today, Dr. Andrew Sarowitz, who made the effort, who is in studio in Los Angeles, flew out across the country, and I have to rock the Brooklyn Nets jersey on his behalf. So, you know. That's right. That's right.
It was a requirement to do the show. We made a deal on that.
It was a requirement. So without further ado, we welcome in studio today, along with my fabulous co-host, Caitlin Patricia Weiler, fresh from a dentistry conference.
Whoop, whoop.
Kid you not. Okay,
Yep.
We're going to hear about that later.
Jack of all trades over here.
We welcome Dr. Andrew Sarowitz.
Welcome.
Thank you. I made
Thanks
it.
for
I'm
flying
here.
cross country for us.
Yeah, it turns out it's a real show. The way you described it, I thought it was like in somebody's basement or something, but it's like a real thing.
How was
Very
Richard
cool.
describing the show?
It was more like my own sort of image. So it definitely exceeded expectations.
Which part? The wood, the
whole deal.
brick
I mean,
wall?
the bricks are fake, but I
Darn it, he just gave away the fake brick wall.
I feel like that's like the exact kind of behind the scenes stuff that people want to know about, the fake bricks.
The fake.
I didn't touch the plant, but I think that's it.
Yeah.
Well, we don't just give every guest the brick wall.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
I
a
appreciate
sign
it.
of urban
I appreciate
ruggedness.
it. You gave up the good.
Wanted you to
wall.
feel at home in Brooklyn.
Yeah, man.
So how's your trip to California going?
It was interesting. It's a little
It's
different.
still going on. It's still happening. You're still
it's
here.
happening. I'm here. No, it's cool. It's a little different from back home. But I'm sort of like picking up on the vibe. I'm kind of getting used to the people. It's, it's probably because where I was staying, like I was in like downtown Hollywood, and so it's
Oh, you get some very interesting people
out there. And like I'm still on New York time, so I was up at like 5:30 every day, and there's some like weird stuff that happens at 5:30. I saw someone walking a goat in the CVS parking lot at 5:30.
Well, I heard goats
walking
are great
a goat.
pets, by the way.
In Hollywood.
Yeah, so that was weird.
That's a new thing
That's
now.
Holly weird.
Yeah, that kind of stood out. Like I had to do a double take, and I saw someone wearing like a full-on like Hellraiser costume, like in the morning, just walking down the street. Like
I used to live in
There's-
Hollywood too, so
It
I mean,
happens.
at first you're like, oh wow, and then it's normal. It's normal walking past like Chewbacca every day.
Yeah, I think I did see like a Chewbacca in my travels, but it reminded me of like Times Square with the knockoff like kind of mascots trying to get $1 for a picture. So it made me feel like I was back home for a little bit. It's cool.
Yeah, if you're waiting in line for a play, you'll meet Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, you'll meet
or Spider-Man number 1, 2, and 3.
That's true. It's like copyright, so it's like Spider Dude and Wonder Lady and that kind of stuff. Yeah. But so that was interesting. But it's funny you were talking about like camp and stuff, because that was a really long time ago. I was probably like 14 or 15, and you know how you think everyone's like really old back then. So I did some quick and dirty math, and I assumed you were like 50 something.
I know, right? You keep saying that, man. Don't age me quicker than I am.
I mean, you're doing all right for 50. But is that like you just assume everybody's like a full-on adult at that time? But you were only like what, like 20 something, or?
I think must have been 22.
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
so what I mean, do you have any memories you can share on the air of me as a counselor or at camp? I mean,
I don't know, like not a ton.
The
like,
good stuff. We want to know the good stuff.
I don't even remember. I mean, that was probably what, like 97, 98, something
I think 97
like that.
was the last year.
I just remember the nickname. I don't remember much about why that was a thing.
The nickname? What nickname?
Do people know this?
Yeah, people know this. Some of my friends still call me.
I don't know this nickname.
Yeah.
What is it?
You can tell them.
Bull.
Bull?
Yeah.
You're the bull.
That's it.
Wow.
You see?
Yeah.
But I always love it. I love it because it's like, you're just talking about before the show, we were doing power poses. Caitlin was having us wake up by doing like a yoga pose. Supposedly if you put your arms above your head, you feel very powerful and strong. So the interesting thing about nicknames is, and I know that like kids get in trouble for, bullying all the time and what's your nickname, and it's funny in packs or even in teams, like people wind up getting some sort of a name. And I always tell people this story because that was my first year at camp. I think I was 13 or 14 years old, and I was so quiet and shy. And there was a character on a TV show named Night Court, and his name was Bull. Even though he was tall, but he was not very assertive looking. Yeah, so I think they gave me some sort of a shaved buzz cut in the middle of the night and wrote the name Bull in the back of my head, and so but then it stuck and it became like a badge of honor. So all of a sudden my basketball jerseys had a Chicago Bull type emblem on it. So
cool.
So I think it's great. I always love it when we were joking that I'll be on vacation in San Francisco in Golden Gate State Park and someone yell out, Bull. So I think the power of nicknames is phenomenal, and the fact that that I can still connect with people around it. So I don't correct them if they want to project.
I love it. I'll start calling you Bull.
There you
That'll
go.
be an adjustment.
You're lucky you got a good one. I mean, there's a pretty big spectrum.
I kind of think that's funny.
Did you get
Dr.
one? Did you get
Bull.
a camp nickname? It's a TV show. I swear that whoever wrote that show,
There's a show, Dr. Bull?
Yeah,
Really?
The TV show Bull is about a psychologist who works on trial science. So and they call him Dr. Bull. So I don't know, whoever's out there, I'm looking for copyright infringement.
Yes.
It's pretty good branding. I think you should continue that. Yeah, but I'm trying to think. I mean, it was so long ago. But it's funny with social media, you kind of feel like not as much time has really passed. Even people I haven't spoken to in 20 years, you still sort of see them kind of every day, just with their posts.
You feel
and stuff.
familiar, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird.
And back then, did you know that you were going to be a dentist?
No, I really, I don't know what I thought. I mean, I was interested in medicine and stuff like that, and it just kind of I don't know, the more I learned about it, it kind of seemed like a good kind of fit for me. But
so was Tampa Positive? Was it a positive influence on you?
For sure. It was weird. It's sort of almost like I wasn't in a fraternity, but it seems very similar, like a very tight-knit group that's sort of separate from the real world that you can only sort of see certain times of the year and stuff. So it's a sort of unique kind of connection there.
Was that a camp where you stayed overnight and you were there for weeks?
Yeah, 8 weeks
Oh,
every
8 weeks.
summer. Yeah, and so certain bunks stayed together for years.
See, I'm kind of jelly of that. I always wanted to go to a real summer camp and because there was that show with Camp Anawana. Do you remember that? Or maybe I'm dating
Is
myself.
that Salute Your Shorts or?
Yeah, Salute Your Shorts. It was such a good show.
God.
You just wanted to live that. Oh my God.
Now we know what you've been watching on Netflix, Dr. Andrew. Gee, this is good. Truth serum, Caitlin.
But no, that's awesome, because then you bonded. It became family for sure then if you spent that much time together.
Oh, it's a tremendous influence, and I would recommend it for any parents of teens out there, or anybody who's looking to, it's like everyone's trying to figure out what's next in their life. Well, the power of just, young kids appreciate teenagers. They're similar to them in age. They may not listen to adults. So
Right.
being immersed with them in that experience, and there's nothing like it because you're away from television. I mean that tends to be one of the nicer, more comfortable camps. It's not all rugged outdoors, but you're outdoors. You're playing all day, and for a lot of people who come from comfortable homes, that just isn't the lifestyle.
Right.
You don't even go in a car very often. So it's very, I think it's very healthy, and it puts you around a lot of people that there's just nothing like that experience, being around each other 24/7.
Mm-hmm. Well, you were a counselor though, right? Did you ever go to a camp yourself?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I got my I went older, so I was 13, 14, and quickly my second year became a CIT. So it became like a way you could make a little bit of money and still be a camper. I mean, you don't get paid like probably you would if you were grinding it out. But you make something, and it became a way for me to put myself through college. So, and you get around a lot of people, a lot of PE teachers, and people bring their families. So it's nice to see that experience going on, and it connected to, I always talk about Big Al Leibowitz and his children Sean and Callie. They were great influences, and Big Al, like, it was a mythological figure. He's a principal, I think, from Brooklyn or the Bronx. Former, if he didn't play in the NFL, he tried out in the NFL. I mean, really a son of a butcher, and he was the kind of guy that would put you in the golf cart, and when you were leaving to go off to college, like, he gave you the pre-college speech. It was almost like an adopted uncle.
Right.
A very intimidating figure that laid down the law and really enforced protecting the safety of the kids. So kids felt safe, and they also felt disciplined. And I think that's a gift, depending on the home you come from, when
Absolutely.
you have, and I saw that this weekend, the power of a team that has a coach that's means business and teaches focus and offers something maybe that the home or school doesn't offer.
Well, even back in my nanny days, parents would ask me, how do you have that much discipline with my children? How come I can't? Because the day I walked in the door, I set the tone.
That's right. So you were a candidate for Super Nanny as well.
I was, yes.
So what's this now? Why were you at a dental convention?
I know, right? Well,
did
I
you
was
prepare
hired
for the
to.
show?
Yeah.
Was this on-the-job research?
Yes, on-the-job research. So I got to. I've been doing trade shows and conventions for over a decade, and depending on what trade show you work, you have a short training, and then you're there as basically temporary to do what you can. And with this show, I was with. It was the American Association Orthodontics show, something of that liking. And then I worked and represented the company, I think it's the American Orthodontics Solutions or something to that liking. But it was really incredible what I was representing, because it was nothing I knew about before. And it's a revolutionary machine for the industry where, I mean, if you're familiar with retainers and braces when you were a kid, the machine or people were always bending those wires for the retainers, and it would take a really good technician about 30 minutes to do that after they have the patient's file. And this machine that they've been making for 30 years now makes these wires in 30 seconds.
Wow.
So the whole process can be done in less than 4 or 5 minutes versus the old process was about an hour.
Yeah, and
So it's
Dr.
really
Andrew
cool
was
to learn
sharing some of
about.
the other technologies he's
Yeah.
been.
You made it seem so exciting, the wire bending aspects.
Well, when you
of,
watch it was pretty
Is this a
incredible.
job interview here?
And the machine is $100,000. It's no joke.
Oh,
Yeah.
For wire bending. It's
For
amazing.
wire bending.
And what about the scanner you were mentioning, Dr. Andrew?
Yeah, it's the future. It's crazy.
Scanner?
We're getting rid of a lot of the old like impression materials and that kind of stuff to do like 3D scans, and it's just,
I saw those 3D printers there, and they do it, or we're saying by layers of.
Yeah, they do it a lot for ortho too.
Yeah.
It's cool.
But then they were saying one company that had this machine or this 3D printer, Adidas is using it for sneakers to help form, the perfect shoe to the foot. And so now they're doing like personalized sneakers like that with the 3D printers.
It's the future.
The game
man.
is changing everywhere.
How do we get these people to sponsor this show? That was a great plug for all this dental stuff.
Yes.
That's right.
Wire
And for
making
Adidas.
Adidas.
I've reached out to you once. It's on you. So without further ado, let's get to the story that everyone wants to hear, which is the story of you, as modest as you are, Dr. Andrew.
There's like 4 people that want to hear this.
No.
They've all contacted me.
3 of them are in this room.
So, yeah, I mean, people often wonder, right? Caitlin asked you about how you discovered to be a dentist, but how...
Or what is, like, for me, I'm just, like, not knowing you, like Richard knows you. What does it mean to be a sports-specific dentist, right?
Is it a niche? Do people go to school for it? Like,
yeah,
did you have a love for basketball? That
Did you just start in dentistry and then it just took you the sports route?
Yeah, I will answer those questions in the order that I remember.
We can remind you.
Yeah, no, it's I was never super interested in dentistry as a kid. It just kind of happened, seemed like the best option at the time, considering like all the factors, the school, the lifestyle, the money, and that kind of stuff. So I was never like really into it until I got into my residency. It was in a hospital, and it was a lot of like trauma work and ER cases, and we were doing like general surgery rotations and anesthesia and that kind of stuff. That was a lot more exciting to me. So that was.
So blood doesn't faze you?
No. In the beginning, a little bit. I mean, it definitely takes some getting used to, but that stuff was a lot more, exciting to me. Being on call, having a pager, not having the kind of backup that you did in school. Like if you're having an issue and you need help, there's like, it's just you, So that was what really kind of got me into it, and kind of really got me into learning more about like the surgery aspects of it. After that, it just, I was a typical dentist. I went the private practice route.
You're saying you got excited by not having support?
Yeah, it was sort of like all that like fight or flight kind of stuff, just getting thrust into like the deep end, and it's either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. And,
That's quite a... I'm thinking your reaction, same thing for me. It was something like that, I would be a nervous wreck. I don't know if I would be excited.
I mean, initially, were you like, how do I get out of here? Or,
yeah, no, it was awful.
More than I
said? Keep in mind, this is all like in hindsight. Like,
right.
Now I can say like, it was great. It was like the best experience of my life. But at the time, it was brutal. It was like the closest I hope I ever come to like a prison sentence, because it was like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on call once a week for 24-hour shifts. It's like you can't do the things you want to do. You're like kind of their property for a solid year. And I think I was like pretty close to a breakdown on like my second day. I was like, how am I going to do this for a year?
Did you have a good cohort or anybody you looked to be like, how are we going to survive this?
24-hour shifts?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was great in that respect, because it was like a very small group. It was a lot of like one-on-one time with the attendings. Most of them like sort of volunteered their time, so it's like people that were pretty passionate about what they do. So it was like seeing people like that I was like, oh, maybe there's more to this. There's like cooler things that we didn't really learn about in school. And that was when I got into like some of the trauma stuff, and I got interested in like implants and more like oral surgery type cases and things.
Do you do a lot of surgeries then?
I do a lot of implants, especially a lot of like perio surgery, that kind of stuff, because that's like what interested me. And I'm fortunate, like I can kind of, pick and choose the cases that I get to do now. I can kind of cherry pick the stuff that I like, and that's just sort of, how I ended up kind of practicing. Not everyone is like that. Everybody kind of, I feel like, pushes the cosmetic stuff, like they want their own like TLC show or something, or some sort of extreme makeover type deal. But it just that kind of stuff really interested me. But like fast forward to like the sports stuff, it ended up being like a perfect fit. because it's like a lot of trauma, it's a lot of that kind of stuff, and you really don't see that in private practice. It's kind of like those cases are very few and far between, so it's like an opportunity to see, like,
more
a lot of
extreme
that kind of
cases more
stuff.
often.
Yeah, and it was kind of like right in my wheelhouse, and that's why it's like everything was like preparing me for this like little sort of like area, that kind of work to do.
Were you open at the time, or you like, I'd like to get expand, you like you're setting up your practice, like, were you looking to get into working with, use your trauma experience?
Yeah, not a ton, because like I said, that kind of stuff, it's usually done in a hospital setting. I mean, if you're having an accident, you're going to the hospital, and
right.
you're not calling up your dentist usually.
So it's not as simple as like, hey, we want to work with the sports team, we can just reach out to them. There was something, they vetted you.
It was sort of the opposite. Yeah, I mean, they're
protective of their players and the relationships they have.
Yeah. Like when we got approached by the Brooklyn Nets, it was like it's kind of random. I mean, I wish there was a better story, but they sort of just like cold called us, kind of like they were looking for someone to be part of the medical staff, and we just like, it's one of those things you sort of just say yes to, and then you kind of figure out what it's about afterwards. But we really didn't know what that really entailed.
We'll say more about that, because just saying yes to it, I mean, it's like you
Like
don't love, if you don't love basketball, right?
Yeah.
Like, so how did you know it was the opportunity that was in line with the direction you wanted to grow?
Well,
or was it like, say yes now, figure it out later?
Yeah, that's sort of my like.
I do that a lot.
That's my philosophy for a lot of things, because like when you start, especially like a high pressure thing like that, when you really start to think about it, like I don't know how your brain
Or question yourself, right?
Yeah, like you start to think about the reasons that why you wouldn't want to do it. It's a lot of responsibility, it's a lot of hours, and it's like a very high pressure type thing dealing with professional athletes. I didn't have any time for that. I just, it's like, say yes, figure it out afterwards. And there was, it took some time to kind of get comfortable with the team. And it's sort of like an interesting gig, because it's very extreme in terms of what you do. I'd say like, 90% of the time it's a babysitting gig. It's just, it's like being there just in case, something happens.
I was going to ask that. So are you at every game, and how often are you?
Yeah, so we
every practice?
Not every practice, just every home game. We also take care of the visiting teams too when they're in town. So pretty much anybody that's in Brooklyn for the series, we're just have to kind of be there. But yeah, it's like 90% I would say babysitting, and it's that other like 10% of the time where sometimes some like crazy shit can happen.
But that's your favorite part of the job,
that's
right?
my favorite part of the job. Yeah, it's like it's so weird, because I can't speak from my partners that I do this with, but like that's like the kind of stuff I live for. It reminds me of being back at the hospital and like having the pager. Like I was probably one of the few people that was like, we get like amped up when that happens. The fight or flight kind of kicks in. I mean, it's different.
I think let's not overcomplicate that. You just liked having the pager. The pager was cool back in the day.
Gonna say,
I had a pager
like,
in high school.
It was like the same. Your friends would just page you, and they type in like hello. And
No, back in the day it was 143. That I love you.
I mean, it's a little different at like at like 3:00 in the morning. It's a little bit different. That's less fun. But it's just like it's an opportunity to kind of like put on your cape and go help somebody that's like having like a pretty terrible day. So that's kind of what it's like. I mean, luckily, like most of the cases are pretty straightforward. It's nothing like crazy. Like 9 times out of 10, it's probably some sort of laceration, like a cut lip, cheek, tongue. But pretty much anything that needs sutures, most of the time, we're the ones that they called, just because that's what we do.
So now you figured that out by experience, right?
Yeah.
So what was like the craziest scenario that you got called into that you were like, oh, this is what I'm here for? Or,
yeah, there were some crazy ones for sure. Like our whole first season was pretty quiet. It was pretty basic. I think I had like, one case where I had to like suture a lip or something, and everything else was like, okay, come to the office tomorrow, it'll be fine. But this was probably like the start of our second year. I gotta find. I think there's a video online I was trying to find for you, but a player was on a fast break play and he kind of wasn't looking where he was going, and he collided faces basically with another player. And this is a guy that's like, I guess built a little bit more sort of delicately than the other guy, because he came up from the injury with a pretty gruesome, facial laceration. Like we call it like almost like a burst lesion. So not very clean margins, everything kind of going in all different directions. Almost
meaning like not a straight cut.
Exactly, like more like a jigsaw puzzle that you have to kind of piece together. He was also, concussed. He was barely conscious. He needed help getting off the court. They stopped the game for it. It was bad, and this was someone that
Scary.
I knew. It was someone I knew pretty well. He was a patient of mine for a while.
So I get chills just hearing you say that. I mean, do you still feel it when you describe it?
Not, I mean, I've told this story a bunch of times because it was like a real sort of like turning point for me. Because it was the first time where we're there for every game, just socializing, watching the games most of the time, and this was the first time where it's like something's happening, but and like I said, it was someone that I knew pretty well, so that made it kind of worse. It was sort of like watching like a car accident kind of happen in real time,
right?
Like feet away from you in the middle of this like crowded arena. So they had a hard time kind of like helping him off the court. We finally got him back to the exam room in the locker room, and the docs that are on staff, it's like everyone has their little area. Like there's radiology, there's internal medicine, there's like a foot and ankle guy. So it was like me, internal medicine doc, and I think it was like a foot and ankle guy were the ones there, like cleaning him up, and we were just sort of like
trying to figure out what's next.
Yeah, trying to figure out what's going on. And like some of the players came back, the GM came back. I think at one point the coach came, like they stopped the game because it was that brutal. And then like it started to get like a little quiet in the room, and everyone sort of like kind of slowly did one of these and kind of like looked in my direction, and I never really like made the connection, like, wait, this is me, like this is my thing now. Yeah. And
so what do you feel when you describe that moment of realizing like, yeah, you're the,
everyone's looking at you to,
I'm picturing like the Chevy Chase film, it's like doctor,
or like
yeah,
the slow
pretty
mo
much.
of like the head's turning.
Yeah, you're the expert in that moment, and you get a chance to like prove your training to yourself, really.
Yeah, it was like it's one thing if you like have an opportunity to prepare for it, but that's sort of like, the big thing with these kind of cases, there's really no prep. You don't know what's going to happen. And I mean, obviously like the chances of an accident like that are like super slim. I mean, no one would think that you need to be ready for something like that. But sure enough, I was the guy. I was the one that was there. And, once we got everything cleaned up, it was like, so it was probably about 2 inches through and through on his cheek. So think like the Joker.
Wow.
Intraoral and extraoral, so it was wide open from here to here.
His face was cut open from here to here.
That's probably an exaggeration, but like probably about an inch and a half, like something like that.
Wow. My goodness.
Yeah, and it was a lot of work.
For me, the side of that, I would have hit the floor instantaneously.
Yeah, I mean, imagine somebody that you know pretty well. Like it's one
goodness.
thing, like in a hospital where it's just somebody off the street. But
so it's harder when you know someone because you care about. You're invested in
their well-being, right?
Or
yeah,
are you afraid of doing more harm? Like talk about that, because that's something that people don't understand.
It's hard to say. It's like it's something like I do all the time. Like it shouldn't be an issue, but it's like when you kind of see someone that like that, it's like kind of got to take a step back for a second and just kind of like refocus and
when you're emotional, it's hard to be a technician.
Element. Yeah, because normally you just I would say I kind of would just go on autopilot there. But it kind of like takes you out of that element, which is like the challenge. And like, so with this particular case, when it was all said and done, I think we probably laid like 20-25 sutures, intraoral, extraoral, intramuscular, not to mention putting his lip back, which is a challenge in itself, just from a cosmetic point of view. And it felt like an eternity. It probably took about 20-25 minutes.
He didn't leave the arena?
No, like usually with cases like with other lacerations, I mean, the goal is to patch him up and get him back in the game, depending on how severe it is, like something like this.
Did he go back in the game? I was going to say.
He was going nowhere. I'm pretty sure, I don't remember if he went to the hospital or not, because he was being evaluated for a concussion as well. But it was a pretty intense room. They had like his mom on the phone. Everybody was like, and he was like barely conscious and like couldn't really communicate too well. He was making some noises that were a little bit unsettling too. just from.
Or I'm
having that
imagining
kind
like
of injury.
how was the bleeding stopped then?
So that's another
Must have
thing
been a lot of
too.
blood.
Yeah, this wasn't in my clinic. This wasn't in a dental chair. This was 3 docs just sort of like patting it dry and trying
Field
to close
medicine,
it.
huh?
Yeah.
Sort of,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's the careful thing that you, as a medical professional, you have to be careful of, which is vicarious trauma, like that feature of your memory of things feeling like it was really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Is the way in which your brain like maybe has chosen to remember things, right? Because it's maybe too much flooding of emotion when we see something that's shocking.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely like, and like I said, like a lot of people kind of asked me about that story because it was sort of like a turning point for me. Because up until that point, like I said, it's mostly a babysitting gig. It's just like, we're there because we have to be there, and like, we help out when we're needed. But like, I'm
going to tell the players you're saying they need to babysit.
I'll say it to their face. I'm scared of them. No,
you have a bunch of people coming in next week, like.
No, but you know what I mean? Like, it was just like after something like that, it was like kind of like a different vibe because the people that I kind of look up to there, it's the other physicians. Those are the guys that I really have to kind of be on point with because we work together. And you're talking guys that are like top of their field. They work with a lot of sports teams. Hockey, football, basketball, like everything you can think of, and just like really, really professional guys. So to be part of that team is like, it's a little intimidating, but in that particular moment, like I was the guy. There's no one else you could go to.
And it sounds like as a professional, that gives you a different kind of reward to be with leaders in the field or people that are, that kind of able to deliver on demand.
Yeah, exactly. Because like you never know. I mean, there's no way to like figure that out in an interview. Like you never know how somebody's going to react in that kind of a situation. And it's like, it just worked out that it happened to be a game that I was covering and I was there, and it's just like it was right in my wheelhouse. So it worked out, and like I was expecting like a different sort of like reception when I came back to the next game. I think I was telling you this too, like I had to do like a follow-up in a couple of days after, just like check on him, and I was expecting like a standing ovation, from everybody. It was nothing like that. It was just business as usual. It was like you did your job.
That's
and
normal.
That was it.
We all want a little bit of
like
You're
a
like,
pat
where
on
is
the
all
back,
my
something.
pats
He's back out there. Yeah,
exactly,
a little something.
Exactly.
Nobody gave you a thumbs up. Not even
or
another
high
doctor.
five.
Like,
Something.
I got a phone call. I did get a phone call from one of the physicians, so that was like a great phone call.
Peer-to-peer recommendation. Yeah, like hey.
But that was it. That was the recommendation. It was done in private. It was very like everything that happened was a very like internal thing for me. But after that day, it was,
hear that, everybody? Thank your dentist because they're unheralded.
Yeah. hopefully they had a good residency too. But it's like a different kind of vibe after that. Like my card was stamped. I passed the test, and I was like, okay, now you're one of us.
Yeah. So you're not, and you're not just in medical professional. You also move a lot of your skills into business and being an entrepreneur. Now, how do you balance working with a sports team with having your own practice? So a lot of people are afraid to step out of their role as a professor or as a someone who has a practice, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you find the way to do that? And how do you figure it out?
It's definitely a challenge, and
how long have you had your practice?
So I have 4 practices right now, but I started everything in 2012. It's just been just a little bit. But yeah, if you think 1 is tough, imagine 4.
4,
it's like,
and then the sports team.
Yeah, so it's like there's good things and bad things about having that kind of setup. I mean, the great thing is the flexibility. I can kind of like pick and choose where I'm going to be, what kind of patients I'm going to see. My partners don't necessarily have that ability to just sort of like drop everything if an emergency comes up or you have to do something with the team. So for me, it works out really well. It's pretty much like an even split. Like half my time is like treating patients. The other half is usually like administrative kind of stuff.
Yeah. And you were saying that, some people think like, 4 practices must be, more energy split, but right, it sounds like you're building a team, and when the team has an approach that's coordinated,
it runs itself, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's probably the most important thing, just surrounding yourself with the right kind of people. I try to play to people's strengths and let them kind of work within their realm. but I couldn't do it without people like that I can trust, that I know that can kind of run these companies for me when I'm not around and things. But that's the hard part, finding those kind of people, because they're pretty few and far between, you know.
So how have you gone about finding people that are like-minded? You know, like a lot of people come out of dentistry school and they're trained in their craft, but how do you find people that understand that?
Yeah, I mean, it's
the sports world or the business world, and multifaceted.
It's tough. I mean, when I was first getting started, the kind of people I surrounded myself with, I was pretty much like related to. You know, those are the kind of people I can trust. And like, you know, my partner in Brooklyn was like a co-resident of mine, a really good friend from school and stuff. You know, so those are like the only kind of people that kind of fit the bill. But in any kind of business, you know, I just try to surround myself with the smartest people that I can. I know what I know and I know what I don't know. Like, I do a lot of stuff and I could probably do like maybe like 3 or 4 things like really well. You know, that's how I look at it. Like, I don't pretend to be an expert at everything, even though I'm involved in everything. I just trying to find the people that can like fill those gaps for me. You know, I don't know a lot of tech stuff. If I need to design a mobile app, I got a guy on my phone that can hook it up. You know, I'm not a lawyer, but if I need legal advice, I got a guy that I can talk to. You know, if I'm developing a new sports card, I have a product development guy that I can talk to, and a lab tech, and it, you know, the list kind of goes on. And that's sort of what I've been doing, you know, just getting the right people around me, so that I can focus on just steering the ship. Because if you try to do everything, nothing gets done. You know, and I've been in those situations too, where I have like just a lot of work to do. I got 30 things on my list of things to do today, and then come the end of the day, I've done half of 30 things. So I've accomplished 0. You know, and it's just like you kind of get stuck not knowing how to focus your energy. I do better just kind of steering the ship in those directions, you know. That's kind of what worked for me, and it's a mistake I see a lot of people make. It's everybody thinks they're an expert. Everybody wants people to hear their opinion. A lot of people want to be contrarian because they think that'll make their voice a little bit louder. And, you know, it's my job to just kind of like silence the noise. You know, that's probably the biggest thing I would say. Like, you know, people don't realize it's kind of like walking a tightrope sometimes, because the difference between, you know, what decision I make, it can be very marginal. You know, one piece of information can kind of push me one way or the other, and it's such a challenge to just kind of stay focused and stay the course, and just like I said, not listen to that noise. And it's a tremendous amount of mental gymnastics just to kind of like,
yeah, I feel like you just said like 3 things in that one line that a lot of, you know,
and I relate to that.
In terms of self-talk for mental skills, you know, tilting the scales, and steering the ship forward. That sometimes, right, when you're trying to make decisions, it's really small decisions and positive habits. It sounds like you're almost building like CEO type performance.
Yeah, I mean, and that's sort of like where I'm at. Like, I feel like I am at like a tipping point, you know, because in the beginning it's like setting up a small business, and then another small business, and another. But at what point does it become a large business? And, you know, what's got me sort of over the hump is treating it like that, like a corporation, like a chain. In the biz, they call it like a DSO, you know, like a big sort of management organization that can run these things. And I was talking to you about it too, like the challenges of like scaling your business and like what it takes to do another project. And for me, it's just being streamlined. It's sort of like eliminating the redundancies and trying to see what I can centralize. You know, it's like, okay, you have 4 dental practices. Does that mean I have 4 billers? No, I have 1 billing company that does all the locations. Do I have like 4 SEO no, I have 1 SEO company that manages everything. I have 4 marketing, you know, the list goes on. But that's sort of how I started to think about it, and that's what led to the expansion. Because like, if you don't do it that way, all you're doing is like quadrupling your headache. You know, it doesn't matter how much more money you're making. You know, there's only like a finite amount of time and effort you can put into it, and you'll get underwater.
So where did you learn that? So like streamlining your business, learning about efficiencies. I mean, these are like, you know, things that I'm reading in like, you know, business books and about, you know, advertising and design. And so how did you achieve this level of understanding of these concepts? And if you're out there and there's someone who's like struggling through grad school and they're like, well, I don't know anything about SEO or building a team, like, so what was maybe one book you read or one person that you found that inspired you?
I mean, I've gotten sort of like little nuggets here and there. Like I've never really had like a true mentor, but I've had a lot of people that I've gotten some like little sort of good pieces of information from. And believe it or not, most of this stuff I figured it out because I screwed it up at some point in my career. You know, I figured out kind of what works and what doesn't, and I don't kind of shy away from that kind of stuff.
I love that you're just being so honest that you say you screw up, because I think we all screw up.
Don't be afraid to muck it up. Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Don't
Sometimes
be
the
afraid to fail.
biggest mistake is the biggest lesson that you needed to get to the next level too.
Yeah, I mean that's something a lot of the fighters say. It's like we either win or we learn. There are no losses. You know, you should be taking something from it. And that's sort of like what I did. And you know, people don't always see like kind of what goes on behind the scenes. Like, you know, for me, there's like, you know, there's wins and there's losses. You just want to make sure that you have more wins than losses. That's really it, you know. So I try not to like, you know, I would rarely celebrate a win, and I would almost like never dwell on a loss. You know, the two kind of go hand in hand. It's just always on to the next thing, you know.
So
But for me, it took me a long time to learn that, what you just said.
Yeah.
Like back in my pageant days when I would always compete as a teenager until, you know, my young adult, I would be, you know, it was always pretty difficult to like try to understand why. I always wanted to know why. And then when I finally really realized I needed to just compete with myself every time I showed up, like that was sort of the big lesson I needed to learn. But everyone could have kept telling me that as, you know, a teenager, but I had to be ready for that, you know, like lesson
depending
myself.
how we interpret information or how sensitive we get and how much we personalize it,
Right.
and our ability to handle feedback and
Failure and all
that doesn't mean,
Or
and that is a
losses.
common thing when I'm, you know, working with youth basketball, youth soccer players, you know, and somebody like they give up one goal, they could have not let up, you know, they could have made 50 saves in a row, and all of a sudden it's like
they gave up. Like,
well,
right?
it's this damage, like I'm, you know, I failed and who didn't protect me, and it's very, it's a deep psychological thing even at that age. And so supporting, then it's like, so nobody's upset, like there's nothing external, so internally, like you've got to be okay with letting it go. You can be a little frustrated, like on a given play you felt somebody could have hustled, or you're upset that you think you could have made a better play, you know.
I remember that being a goalie in soccer, because like you're the one you're protecting the goal. If I didn't block it, you know what I mean.
But
then
in
I feel like
reality,
I'm
it's almost
responsible.
never the goalie's fault, right? They're just defending the rest of the players on the field.
Right.
So, but it's an interesting segue because you talk about fighting, and somehow you've gone from basketball and dentistry into the MMA realm. Like, in our closing time here, tell us how that happened, and how you've gotten excited about fighting.
Yeah, I mean that's honestly what I get real excited about, because I've been a fan of like mixed martial arts for a real long time, and it was like a pretty perfect fit too, because you know it's dealing with like the oral trauma stuff to a little bit more of an extreme extent
I would
than
say
the
very
NBA.
much more extreme.
But again, you know, it's stuff that's like right in my wheelhouse, and I'm super comfortable with.
Basketball's not extreme enough for you.
Not
You needed
extreme
like
enough.
more
It's-
extreme trauma.
Yeah, so
thinking
like so
like,
now you're at all the fights too.
Yeah, we've been going to a lot of fights, and that's like I said, that seems to be like a pretty good fit. I mean, maybe like bullfighting is I don't know.
Oh, gee.
I'm trying to kick it.
So
up
if we see you in Spain in a year or two,
I know,
we'll
my
be
goodness.
okay.
get right in there.
I want the exclusive Skype interview.
But for the fighting stuff, I mean, like I said, you know, we were fans first, so I always go to a lot of events, and I've just, you know, at some of these events, I met some of the guys, and we just, you know, got along pretty well. A lot of them are patients of mine now. Sometimes they invite us out to their fights, which is, you know,
A bonus.
a whole nother set of stories. I think, yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting to kind of see it from that perspective, to see somebody that you know out there, because it's a lot different than just kind of watching it on TV or just seeing some kind of random fighters.
So how do you know if they're like you and befriending you, or they're like, oh man, if I lose this one, Doc will be right there?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's hard to say. You know, I think like-minded people kind of get attracted to each other, and that sort of happened with some of these guys. Just, you know, I like to think that I'm towards the top of my field. You know, for practices, a lot of stuff going on too, and these are guys that are also at the top of their fields, you know, looking to sort of like pivot into other areas as well. So I feel like there's like a lot of synergy there too. You know, like, you know, getting involved in other businesses and things like that. So just kind of hit it off. Like it kind of happened by itself, just from chatting at some events, broing down at some open bars, you know, and just kind of like staying in touch. And what's really cool is like the world's sort of like collided a few times. Like I always try to bring those guys out to basketball games and out to events. Like, so I'm hoping they appreciate it as well. But it's cool, man. Yeah.
So is there anything next then? If you've done?
No, I mean, for now, this is it.
You've got your plate full.
It's always been full. It's always overflowing. But, you know, I always like to have something kind of like in the pipeline because, like I said, you don't know if everything is going to work out. You just want to make sure you have more wins than losses. So I got some new things, some new companies. We're always looking for like new locations. In the near future, we're going to a fight with a friend of mine who's fighting, who I was hoping we could talk to today. That's going to be on part 2. We're going to come back for that. But that's what we're doing, man.
You heard that? We dropped a little
hint.
Little hint coming soon.
Remain nameless.
Exclusive. Hopefully before his upcoming fight, we'll be having MMA fighter in here, which just judging by weight class, I should be able to take easily. So we'll see what he feels about that. But I won't give away any hints just yet. And no, I will not be getting in the octagon. But you never know.
We'll
I do
it
claim.
Right here. It's fine.
Yeah. Is there a safe version with a helmet? But maybe not.
For me, I would need a bubble wrap suit.
Never safe. Yeah, but that's it. Should be cool. Hopefully we can get him out next time to give us some more stories.
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, how would your life look if you were not a part of professional sports? And
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like every once in a while things kind of get like a little kind of stagnant. You know, you kind of need some new things to get like kind of reinvigorated and get reinterested in the field. And like, you know, for me it was always like a new piece of equipment, and like that's not super exciting, but you know, it's something that gets you like jazzed up about your field. And you know, that's kind of what the sports stuff did for me. It was like a whole new kind of niche that nobody is really in, at least not many people are in, you know. So it kind of,
that's really interesting coming from you, who's like, I mean, not identified as athlete, right?
Yeah.
It's not on your, you know, that there's just something inside of you, the peak performer, that's still drawn towards, here's my opportunity.
Yeah.
And I can be of value here and take care. I can treat. And I'm willing to do that for these other guys who are putting their bodies on the line.
Yeah.
And I can identify with that, you know, and wanting to get into sports or both the need. I'm constantly talking to other clinicians, both self-care and training. You need to be learning something, or learning, training something, and reinvigorating in your self-care in order to give back. Otherwise, it's the same conversation, and you're not sure that what's coming into the treatment room isn't the same chemicals, and that you're not missing something, at least in therapy, right? You're not picking up or pushing your clients to get out of their comfort zone. So I really think we need to be models for what we want to encourage other people to be.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I think so too. I think that's like well said. You know, to find people at that same level as you that have the same kind of goals and the same kind of mindset.
Or I even say find people that are further, you know, that are doing better than you, or that you can aspire to be like, because then, you know, when you surround yourself with those people, then you're, you know, more likely to keep yourself on point for you to be there, or just have that inspiration.
Absolutely. I think that's a key point that came up in the last week to me, and before we close out, was about like, you know, people said, well, you know, be careful, you know, you're in Hollywood, you're starstruck. I mean, wouldn't you want to work with the highest level in your field? And, you know, be careful because everyone wants to attach themselves to a professional sports team. But I think it's a big difference between being in awe because they are a professional, or just wanting some of their fame, or thinking that they're not human, and kind of that way just dehumanizing them, and saying, I have tremendous respect for the peak performer within them and what they've gotten through, and the appreciation for the commitment, gratitude. You know, so when you start to understand the intrinsic values, and there is something to being a medical professional who's committed many years of their life to their craft and to specializing, so that there's, you know, a similar pathway there. And for these guys who are like 22 years old, but they've been playing since they were 12, like it's real what they go through in AAU. But anyway, we're short on time, so Dr. Andrew, tell us more. How can people look you up, get in contact with you?
Yeah, like if people have questions, like I always tell them
Courtside.
Courtside too.
Courtside's tough.
So when I'm in New York, I'm going to call you up. I'm going to go to a game.
Tickets are okay. Yeah. Courtside's a challenge. Even for me, they don't give that away anymore because they're good. All of a sudden, I don't know if you know this. A couple years ago, it probably would have been easier. Yeah, but Instagram is great. Like if anybody has questions, stuff we didn't get to that you wanted to hear about,
What's your Instagram?
At Dr. Sarowitz, just my last name. Because we had a lot of stuff we didn't get to, a lot of really cool MMA stuff. So hopefully we can like maybe do this again. Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah,
anytime.
man.
Absolutely. We can do Skype, and I hope it invites a host of old campers to come out and share stories.
Yeah,
But
Yes.
that'd be great.
thank you for, just truly humbled that you made the effort, flew across the country to
Yeah,
be
man.
here.
It's such a chore to come to California for a couple of days.
I'm sure it was. We took you out. The shock that you showed, and looking
Seeing
at
goats
nature
in
today.
parking lots.
I took him on a hike. There were lizards attacking him. I should have recorded it.
It's amazing.
My boomerang.
It's too much nature for me.
So
Too much nature for New York City.
So it's been fun. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Stay tuned for our next guest. If you want to know what I'm reading or what I'm recommending, Indoor, recommended by our dear friend and trainer David Bannock, who's been on his own journey with mountain biking and racing. So check him out if you haven't. Former goalkeeper himself, perhaps maybe current goalkeeper, still playing into his adult years. So it's been a real honor being here. Again, if you have topics, high performers in different fields that we are not covering, we will have an expert in elite mountain climbing. We will have an elite basketball program coach coming on. And hopefully soon contender in the MMA realm. So
That's the plan.
So the hints have been dropped, and
Yes.
the peer pressure is on. Thank you all for tuning in. Please share, download iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Send it to your mom for Mother's Day.
Yes.
And your friends who are interested in learning how can they get more connected to what they're passionate about and still reach a level of success in their own professional realm. It can be possible. Whatever you think of or dream of, it's possible to be multidisciplinary, and we thank you for tuning in. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.